Shalom, I'm Rabbi Eric, and today I'll be reading from Genesis chapter 15 to Genesis chapter 18. I'll be reading from the TLV Bible, but you're welcome to follow along on whichever Bible you have handy. Chapter 15. After these things, the word of Adonai came to Abram in a vision. Do not fear, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abram said, My Lord Adonai, what will you give me, since I am living without children? And the heir of my household is Eleazar of Damascus. Then Abram said, Look, you have given me no seed, so a house-born servant is my heir. Then behold, the word of Adonai came to him, saying, This one will not be your heir, but in fact one who will come from your own body will be your heir. He took him outside and said, Look up now at the sky and count the stars, if you are able to count them. Then he said to him, So shall your seed be. Then he believed in Adonai, and he reckoned it to him as righteousness. Then he said to him, I am Adonai who brought you out from Ur of the Chaldeans, in order to give you this land to inherit it. So he said, My Lord Adonai, how will I know that I will inherit it? Then he said to him, Bring me a 3-year-old young cow, a 3-year-old she-goat, and 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young bird. So he brought all these to him and cut them in half and put each piece opposite the other, but he did not cut the birds. Then birds of prey came up down upon the carcasses, but Abram drove them away. Then the sun was about to set, and a deep sleep fell on Abram. Behold, terror of great darkness was falling upon him. Then he said to Abram, Know for certain that your seed will be strangers in a land that is not their own, and they will be enslaved and oppressed 400 years. But I am going to judge the nation that they will serve. Afterward they will go out with many possessions. But you will come to your fathers in peace. You will be buried at a good old age. Then in the 4th generation they will return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. When the sun set and it became dark, behold, there was a smoking oven and a fiery torch that passed between these pieces. On that day Adonai cut a covenant with Abram, saying, I give this land to your seed, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates River, the Kenite, the Kenizzite, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaites, and the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. Chapter 16. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had not borne him children, but she had an Egyptian slave girl. Her name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, Look now, Adonai has prevented me from having children. Go please to my slave girl. Perhaps I'll get a son by her. Abram listened to Sarah's voice. So Sarai, Abram's wife, took her slave girl Hagar, the Egyptian, after Abram lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to Abram her husband to be his wife. Then he went to Hagar, and she became pregnant. When she saw that she was pregnant, in her eyes her mistress was belittled. So Sarai said to Abram, The wrong done to me is because of you. I myself placed my slave girl in your embrace. Now that she saw that she became pregnant, so in her eyes I am belittled. May Adonai judge between you and me. Abram said to Sarai, Look, your slave girl is in your hand. Do to her what is good in your eyes. So Sarai afflicted her, and she fled from her presence. Then the angel of Adonai found her by the spring of water in the wilderness, next to the spring on the way to Shur. He said, Hagar, Sarai's slave girl, where have you come from, and where are you going? She said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai. The angel of Adonai said, Return to your mistress and humble yourself under her hand. Then the angel of Adonai said to her, I will bountifully multiply your seed, and they will be too many to count. Then the angel of Adonai said to her, Behold, you are pregnant and about to bear a son, and you shall name him Ishmael, for Adonai has heard your affliction. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. and away from all his brothers will he dwell. So she called Adonai, who was speaking to her. You are the God who sees me. For she said, would I have gone here, indeed looking for him who looks after me? That is why the well is named, the well of the living one who sees me. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. Then Hagar gave birth to a son for Abram, and Abram named his son whom Hagar bore Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar gave birth to Ishmael for Abram. Chapter 17. When Abram was 99 years old, Adonai appeared to Abram, and he said to him, I am El Shaddai. Continually walk before me, and you will be blameless. My heart's desire is to make my covenant between me and you, and then I will multiply you exceedingly much. Abram fell on his face, and God spoke with him, saying, for my part, because my covenant is with you, you will be a father of a multitude of nations. No longer will your name be Abram, but your name will be Abraham, because I make you the father of a multitude of nations. Yes, I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you into nations, and kings will come forth from you. Yes, I will establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you, throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, in order to be your God and your seed's God after you. I will give to you and to your seed after you the land where you are an outsider, the whole land of Canaan, as an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. God said to Abraham, as for you, my covenant you must keep, you and your seed after you throughout your generations. This is my covenant that you must keep between me and your seed after you. All your males must be circumcised. You must be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, and this will become a sign of the covenant between you and me and you. Also, your 8-day-old must be circumcised, every male throughout your generations, including a house-born slave or a slave bought with money from any foreigner who is not of your seed. Your house-born slave and your purchased slave must surely be circumcised. So my covenant will be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. But the uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that person will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. God also said to Abraham, as for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her by the name Sarai, rather Sarah is her name. I will bless her, and moreover I will give you a son from her. I will bless her, and she will give rise to nations. Kings of the people will come from her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed, and said in his heart, will a son be born to a 100-year-old man? Or will Sarah, who is 90 years old, give birth? So Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael might live before you. But God said, on the contrary, Sarah your wife will bear you a son, and you must name him Isaac. So I will confirm my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his seed after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. See, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful, and I will multiply him very, very much. He will father 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this set time next year. When he finished speaking with him, God went up from Abraham. Then Abraham took Ishmael his son and all of his house-born slaves and all of his purchased slaves, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskin on this very same day, just as God had spoken with him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And his son Ishmael was 13 years old when he was circumcised on the flesh of his foreskin. On this very same day, Abraham and Ishmael, his son, were circumcised. Also all the men of his house, house-born slaves, and slaves purchased from a foreigner were circumcised with him. Chapter 18. Then Adonai appeared to him at Mamre's large trees, while he was sitting in the entrance of his tent during the heat of the day. When he lifted up his eyes to see, suddenly 3 men were standing right by him. When he saw them, he ran from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed down to the ground. Then he said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in your eyes, please do not pass by your servant. Please let a little water be brought so that you can wash your feet and make yourselves comfortable under the tree. And let me bring a bit of bread so you can refresh yourselves. Then you can pass on, since you have passed by your servant. They said, Do just as you have said. So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, Quick, knead 3 measures of fine flour and prepare bread loaves. Then to the herd Abraham ran and took a young ox, tender and good, and he gave it to the servant who prepared it quickly. Then he took butter and milk and the young ox that he had prepared and set it before them. While he was standing by them under the tree, they ate. Then they said to him, Where is Sarah, your wife? There in the tent, he said. Then he said, I will most surely return to you in about a year's time. Surprisingly, Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. Sarah had stopped having the way of women. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, After I've grown decrepit, can I have desire, and my Lord so old? Then Adonai said to Abram, Why is it that Sarah laughed, saying, Can I really give birth when I'm so old? Is anything too difficult for Adonai? At the appointed time I will return to you in about a year, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah denied it, saying, I didn't laugh, for she was afraid. But he said, No, for you did laugh. Then the men got up from there and looked down over Sodom. Abraham was walking with them to send them off, when Adonai said, Should I keep secret from Abraham what I'm about to do? Seeing that Abraham will most certainly become a great and mighty nation, and in him all the nations of the earth will be blessed. For I have made myself known to him, so that he will command his sons and his household after him, to keep the way of Adonai by doing righteousness and justice, so that Adonai may bring upon Abraham what he has spoken about him. Then Adonai said, The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great indeed, and their sin is very grievous indeed. I want to go down and see if they deserve destruction, as its outcry has come to me, and if not, I will know. Then the men turned from there and went toward Sodom. But Abraham was still standing before Adonai. Abraham drew near and said, Will you really sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you really sweep away and not spare the place for the sake of 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to cause the righteous to die with the wicked, so that the righteous and the wicked share the same fate. Far be it from you. Shall the judge of the whole world not exercise justice? Then Adonai said, If I find in Sodom 50 righteous people within the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake. Then Abraham answered and said, Look, pray, I have decided to speak to my Lord, though I am dust and ashes. Suppose the 50 righteous people are lacking 5. Will you destroy the whole city for the lack of 5? And he said, I will not destroy it if I find 45 there. So he spoke to him yet again and said, Perhaps 40 will be found there. And he said, I will not do it for the sake of the 40. Then he said, Please let my Lord not be angry, so I may speak. Perhaps 30 will be found there. And he said, I will not do it if I find 30 there. Then he said, Look, pray, I have decided to speak to my Lord. Perhaps 20 will be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for the sake of the 20. Then he said, Please let not my Lord be angry, so I may speak once more. Perhaps 10 will be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for the sake of the 10. Now when he had finished speaking to Abraham, Adonai left, and Abraham returned to his place.